brains like BMW, who look at the bottom line, who look far beyond what you could imagine. These are corporate citizens, and the actors rarely get saluted for going far beyond what is expected. They often excel in volunteering their time and money to charity without recognition. That is why we would like to celebrate BMW. Drive with me, drive with me, drive with me in my BMW. Just drive with me, drive with me, drive with me in my ultimate machine. BMW, the ultimate machine. BMW, the ultimate machine. We are utterly conscious of the fact that business has a large and lasting effect on the world it exists in. That is why we celebrate the role of BMW in constructively intervening to counteract the effects and the business and its functions may have on the environment, may have on the community. That is why we celebrate. That is why.
What wears green rides on golden wings at loftier heights than the ninth deck of silver-lined clouds, deep in the azure blue of ancient skies. Then returning to its nest, descends gracefully to delicately alight in the din of applause on land where the earliest humans first saw the light of day. An Ethiopian Airlines crew, ever ready, ever proud to serve you. Come, walk with us in the footsteps of the ancestors of humankind.
Well, if you just tuned in, thank you for making the 1873 FM your channel of choice. This is your platform for open, frank, and honest conversations in as far as shaping and defining the character and personality of the future that you want, the future that we all want collectively. And more importantly, when you look at how best we can be able to secure that future, one particular industry that one cannot discount is the poultry industry. And the one question that comes to mind this morning is whether the poultry industry is at crossroads. Imports, the devil in the room. So have your say on the 1873 FM's show this afternoon on the 1873 FM. And yes, I'm glad that at the moment I have Mr. Mutuma Mawere joining me in conversation. And yeah, we'll also be joined in conversation by Tumi Mokwene, who happens to be founder of Peteco Farming Enterprise and outgrower for one of the biggest chicken producers in South Africa, that is Astral. So in the meantime, let's welcome Mr. Mawere to the show. Mr. Mawere, a very good evening to you, and thank you so much for giving up time to be on the 1873 on this beautiful day.
Good evening. How are you?
I am very much excited, to be honest, after visiting Peteco Farming Enterprise this afternoon, just to have a better understanding of their operations, and particularly when we look at this industry, the poultry industry, the challenges that most individuals in the industry have been raising, particularly when you look at the issue of cheap imports that are coming into the country, whether they are the devil in the room, and whether the poultry industry in itself is at crossroads.
So I think there's an article that I've just shared there, Astro Foods.
Yes.
The poultry producers in South Africa. And this article was published on the 14th of May. 2019 by Sandile Michunu, and it's a business report. And you can see the Astro blames under recovery for increased input costs for fall in profits. So when you look at it in terms of feeding it, we are told that the average cost per, I think, per chicken output is about 60%. That's the average cost of food. So the chicken food, like all of us, and we eat food. When you look at an average person, in terms of the cost of keeping an individual to death, you know how much the cost is food related?
For an individual, that is.
Yeah.
I've never actually calculated the cost, but I think it actually constitutes a greater proportion of an individual's living.
Did you know that it's 66%? No, it's 6% of the cost.
In as far as chicken is concerned, yes, I only learned of it this afternoon. Actually, it was this morning when Tumi was just sharing about his conversation with the president of South Africa, President Cyril, His Excellency President Ramaphosa.
Yeah. So if we as something that is not known in the industry, when we eat chicken, we never actually pause to think that it's like a human being. That for you to grow from the egg, get out of the egg, and you're a day-old chick, and when you harvest the chicken, on average, you will have spent 66% of the revenue you get for the meat. that is before the abattoir cost and other marketing admin costs involved in the value chain. So this is a number that we ought to consider, we ought to bear in mind, and that gives us an indication. So Astro, in terms of this article, is the largest poultry producer. And what is the revenue for Astro for the chicken?
Let's just go to the article quickly. So when you look at the revenue, the division said its revenue rose to a modest 1% to 5.5 billion rand.
So that's revenue. Is it per quarter or per annum? Or per...
So based on this article that I'm looking at, it says that the operating profit in its poultry division for the 6 months into March. So this is basically a revenue for 6 months.
So that's the revenue for the 6 months?
Yes.
Okay. So if it's double, so it means the annual average turnover would be almost what?
11 billion rand.
About 11 billion rand. So that's just one company in this industry. Then Astro also supplies feed. not just to its own operations, but into other operations. And we are told that the total imports remain high for the period under review. Percentage they are projecting.
Yes, Mr. Murray?
I said, what is the percentage they are projecting?
In as far as
Imports in terms
imports,
of
okay.
local production. What is the percentage of imports compared to local production?
It's about 38% of local production.
38%. And
That's on a monthly basis.
This translates into how many tons a month?
To 41,771 tons per month.
And if you convert the tons into kgs, what will be the total kgs?
Okay, let's just quickly calculate that so that we can be able to get the figure in kgs. So that's 41,771,000 kgs.
Yeah. So if if you look at production for the broilers, on average, let's assume you buy 13 rand per broiler.
Yes.
So how much in terms of value of imports?
In terms of value of imports. Okay, so that's 41,771,000 times 13 rand. So you're looking at 543,023,000.
That's per month, and annually?
Annually, the figure gets to 6.5 billion rand.
6.5 billion rand. So that's what South Africans are paying to external people for consuming chicken.
6.5 billion rand. Yes, that's a big number.
Is that the number?
When we multiply 41,772,000 by 13 rand, yeah, we get 6.5 billion.
Yeah, 6.5 billion. So those are the orders of magnitude. So all those jobs, we can start creating a whole new value chain worth 6 billion. Yeah. That right now we are paying external people in order to meet the demand.
Yes.
So the numbers are big. So you could possibly start one other big producer in South Africa that would then account for this import requirement. So I see with Pastor, are they still coming?
He said I'll update later. Let me just check if he is connecting, but he seems to be online though, so that at least we can be able to have a conversation with Tumi. So
just check whether it's coming or not. Then because we promised 15 minutes.
Yes.
Or let me call him from here and see.
Okay, perfect. So Simbarashe Munemba, it says good evening, Mr. Mawere. Is the importation of poultry into SA part of the trade treaty signed between the government and the supplier nations? It is like a quid pro quo agreement.
That's right. The agreements with other nation states where they commit to taking some of the imported parts or whole chicken into South Africa. There's also an industry of importers who buy from the net exporting countries, especially in Europe, the Americas, and also I think Brazil is one of the large exporting nations.
Yes, yes.
So that's the way the industry is structured. It has domestic suppliers, and it is also have external suppliers.
External suppliers, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, any luck from your end getting to me?
No, I think he seemed to have been on another call.
Okay.
And Mgwagwa, I tried. It looks like they are all not available. Did they come back to you before?
Well, to me, they come back earlier in the afternoon, and they had actually sent him a poster. And he was the only thing that he had mentioned was whether the other individuals would be able to join the discussion.
Okay, that's fine. So I guess this is part of it, just to expose the input factor in value chain. And from there, I think it then becomes easier for people to appreciate that when you import, you can't control the price, and the prices for exporting nations, the prices tend to be lower than the domestic prices because countries are extremely large producers, and as large producers, they have a different cost structure.
Well, now that you mentioned that such countries as Brazil, they are large producers, they're extremely large producers, and because of that, their pricing is much more favorable than local producers. So, if I'm getting you correct, Mr. Mawere,
Oh, just hold on, that's you. Hello.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks, and how are you?
Excellent.
I see your missed call.
Yeah, no, we're almost done here because we had said 7 to 7:15. Yeah, but otherwise we went through the relationship between imports and local production, and also the percentage of local production that is imported, and rate of imports to domestic production, as highlighted by Astral's 6 months results. Yeah. So if you have a few words to say about, from an outgrower point of view, do you think imports are a promise or a threat to your own portion of the business?
No, definitely. I will wait for Tinashe. What
He's on the line as well.
Hello, Tumi. How are you?
All right, thanks, and how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. It's been a wonderful afternoon, and yes, always ready to learn from such conversations, I must say.
Thank you very much. Expecting a call from you?
No, I don't know what happened, because we were meant to start at 7 p.m.
Yes.
to 7:15. Did you get a link from?
Oh, I saw he did send a WhatsApp, and when I opened that link, it says that I must update my phone to be compatible with that.
With the StreamYard. Okay.
So I didn't want to do that while, I'm expecting a phone call from him.
No, you can actually talk to the phone now because we are already in the session. Yeah, you can just give your input. Okay. Because somebody has asked already, good evening. Is the importation of poultry into SA part of the trade treaty signed between the government and the exporting nations or supplier nations? Is it like a quid pro quo arrangement? So what he's asking is, are you aware of any trade arrangements or agreements that are concluded between SA and the countries that export poultry to SA?
No, I'm not aware of that.
There are actually agreements. The US has an agreement with South Africa that provides for the export of US chicken product, poultry product to SA.
Yes, through the AGOA.
Yeah. But there is a bilateral relationship. I think there's also an agreement with the EU, and there's also an agreement with Brazil. Just wanted confirmation. But from your standpoint, do imports pose a threat to your business or to the poultry industry per se?
Quite definitely, Mr. Maweri and Tinashe. The imports are posing a very, very big threat, to us outgrowers, because we are linked and we are part of the value chain, of the growing of this chicken. And if you look at our industry, we are converting a lot of maize and soya, from the grain producers into chicken feed. And when we are getting this big impact on our
Hello, Mr. M? To me?
All right, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Can I, Mr. Mawiri, we don't have a very clear line. Can I call you back or I can shift? Because I can hardly hear you. I'm getting a lot of echo.
Okay, all right. I think Tinashe had put mute as well, so Tinashe wasn't hearing, not because of you, but because of me. I just realized that there was a portion that you couldn't follow. But you are very clear. Tinashe, can you hear him?
Yes, I can hear him now, loud and clearly now.
Okay. So you are okay. So I think the sound is okay. I think what Tumi was saying, yes, it does pose a threat because you have to look at it from a value chain basis. So if Tumi supplies the meat to Astra, then in the meat that he supplies, the feed costs are borne by at the outgrower side level. So the 66% cost, because on average, your cost of feed comes to about 60 to 66% of the actual sales price that you sell to your contract giver. So you are left with only 33% to cover the other costs. And that becomes problematic because the price that you get is not flexible. It's a contracted price per kg of meat. So that being the case, then your fate is determined not just by imports, but the negotiated price.
Absolutely. And if I may come in there, the question is, and that question is, what is the role of an outgrower? You know, an outgrower transforms a chick into a chicken, and there are three main components that we use, you know, to arrive at the cycle. You need to manage your mortality. You need to manage your feed conversion ratio, and the last one is the weight of the chicken. And those three components give us what we call a PDF. You know, so we've got a standard that we use to measure. So our role as outgrowers is to ensure that we keep our mortality as low as possible. We increase our weight so that we can send more kilograms to the processing plant using low feed that we have converted into that body mass. Now, to achieve those three, Mr. Mawere, if you are competing with, you know, chicken from the other countries that is being dumped or coming at unfair prices, you are then in a very disadvantaged position, especially as an outgrower, because you need to have infrastructure that should be able to allow you to keep your mortalities down and the weight up and the FCR as I have indicated. And during this era of climate change, you will realize that you need, you know, controlled and infrastructure that should enable you to have a higher PEM. You need consistent energy supply, because once you have a control, you need to ensure that the energy, you know, you don't have load shedding as a challenge. You've got affordable fuel that should be able to run your generators should you be experiencing load shedding. And those are the key things that are affecting your operating, you know, profit.
So when you say mortality to an average Joe Block who is listening, what is that?
Mortality, we are talking about the chickens that will use an example at our own business. You know, we've got a target of not more than 4% of mortality on the 356,000 beds that we're placing on 2 farms.
Okay.
So you want to make sure that you keep that as low as possible.
So those are the chicken that die before you want them to die.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's unavoidable that you will get 1-to-1 if you put in, you take day olds, that all the 1 day olds will reach to maturity, to the weight that you want.
Yes, yes. You do be a clever person. You have to make provision for such.
For the loss due to death.
Correct.
Due to unplanned death.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's very correct.
Okay.
You make that provision in order for you to be able to reach your targets and realistically.
Okay. Go ahead.
So that is the important part. If you look And the primary mechanical engineer was to bring that finding out what about the more chicken production. How are you, Mr. Kweme? I'm very well, Mr. Magwakwa. Good to hear from you from Zimbabwe. Are you well today, sir? Hello, Mr. Kweme?
Yeah, you saying, are you well?
No, I'm very well. I'm very well. I'm trying to put the phone on Bluetooth so that I can actually hear you perfectly well.
All right. So, Tinashe, are you on?
I'm on.
All right. So I think we'd lost reception. So, we are just talking about. First is to get to know each other, because whether you're in Zimbabwe, you are in Rwanda, if you are in poultry, is the same old business. In broiler operations, is the same business after all.
Correct.
So we will then introduce, because we want to get a council for Africa for poultry, so that we get to know each other, because you guys are complaining that whites are eating alone, but you are not even looking for each other.
Correct.
So there's no white conspiracy as far as the chicken is concerned. Is that correct, Tumi?
That's very correct. There's no conspiracy. I think there are some clear measuring indicators that we all can use, and I want to learn also from Mr. Makwakwa if they are having, the PEF as a standard for them in Zimbabwe. Yeah. No, correct. Probably the main difference between the South African model and our Zimbabwean model, Mr. Mawere, is that it's not the growing pattern. The growing pattern in terms of the biosecurity, remember, in terms of biosecurity, I think they are the strictest ones in Africa. But the difference is that our models are revised time and again on the financial aspect to meet the fluctuation of the Zoom dollar. But I think on everything else, it's the same with music.
What is your mortality rate?
We, out of about 150, which we do 150,000, the best which came out 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we had a mortality rate of about 3.2% in total.
Okay.
Which is quite a very reasonable mortality.
And the average weight?
In broiler production, Mr. Mawere, is that if your weight becomes up to 2 kgs, then your FCR is too high. Normally, your weight, which can make you have profit, should range between 1.71 and 1.9. That's where your weight should play.
But your average real outcome is what?
For this previous batch which came out, we had about 1.79.
Okay, that's good. And how long is your cycle to get
32
that?
days.
Yeah?
32 days.
34
days. The chickens must be out.
So, and how many cycles per year?
Per year?
Yeah.
We do about 5.5 cycles. We can just say 6 cycles, but they call it 5.5 cycles. Meaning 6 cycles means one batch can take us up to 2 months, because after the chickens are out in 32 days, there's a clean week, and there's a resting period of about 14 days waiting for the other chickens to come in.
And to me, what is your average cycle?
Average cycle is we slaughter our birds 32, 33 days. and we've got a resting period whereby we do cleaning, disinfection, fumigation. So within 14 days, not more than 16 days, we will be placing again. So that is, we've got a shorter resting period as compared to Mr. Magwaga.
Okay, and do you understand what Mr. Mugwaga was talking about, the strange situation that when he receives his money from the contract giver, he gets his money in Zimbabwe dollars, is that correct?
Yeah, it's very correct. Yeah, we get this money in Zimbabwe dollars, correct.
Then
They call RTGS dollars.
RTJ, then he has to, the feed, some of it is foreign inputs. So the price also goes up because of the price of foreign exchange. But Tumi doesn't get that problem because he doesn't understand it. He understands rands only, and he pays in rands. His costs are in rands. Is that correct?
That's very correct.
Yeah. So one day you teach him what happens. Things go when things go to my.
No, correct. The South African model is stable because of their, but I can't say it's stable because, in Zimbabwe during the US dollar era, we used to make a profit of about $1 per bag, which South Africa could not match that. The reason being that we don't have cheap Brazilian imports or cheap United States imports, which actually kill the chicken industry in Zimbabwe. So every bag that you see in Zimbabwe is grown bag.
So what is
that's the advantage which we have.
What is the secret?
No, what happened? It's the organization. We are very organized as farmers. There was a time when another very senior government official was bringing about 150,000 chickens every week from Brazil. But then we approached the then president, and as an organized group, and told him to say that we don't need any chicken imports. Otherwise, cheap chicken imports is going to kill our local industry.
Yeah.
And then we did it. The then president listened. We gave him the name of the person, and then that person was actually stopped from bringing chickens within 3 days, and he never brought any chickens again. So the secret is the organization part of it.
Okay.
Agriculture is the backbone of our economy, and we don't need any import coming in.
So you're a good friend of SAPA.
Hello, Mr. Very good friend of
SAPAS, the South African Poultry Association. They are looking for somebody like you and Tumi to be the black bulldogs.
No, it will be good for us to team up in that way. On the basis of that, remember the chicken price in South Africa is very low because of those issues of Brazilian imports and the cheap United States imports because of the AGOA agreement.
Okay, so that was the subject for today, whether imports are a promise or a threat. And from your side, in Zimbabwe, it's recognized by the social partners that imports are a threat.
Correct.
And in South Africa, to me, do you believe that there is consensus or?
I think we are moving towards a consensus with the latest agreement, which is the poultry sector master plan. Both the local producers and the importers, through the facilitation of government, we managed to come up with a plan that says we need to, first of all, protect the local be able to put our country as well in the map of exporting to those countries that need chicken. However, I'm also learning something very good from Mr. Makwakwa.
Yeah.
That through an organized structure, they were able to approach government in Zimbabwe, and their government listened. So I'm happy that we are also moving in that space, whereby through the Honorable Minister Patel, who facilitated this plan together with our Agricultural Minister, Igiza, that we are moving closer towards the direction with the target that says that reduce the poultry imports by 20% in 3 years' time. So for me, that is a good move in the right direction, and we are joining our fellow Zimbabwe brothers on the other side.
So, you know, I had a conversation 2 weeks ago. Somebody saying, I'll be bringing my chickens from outside because local suppliers are greedy. Too much. You guys are too greedy.
Yeah.
And the local producers are like loan sharks. That is why people resort to importing from other countries. Locals are very greedy. So the word that is coming is you guys are greedy.
Yeah, no, they can say that, because the cost of producing a chicken here in Africa is higher than the cost of producing a chicken in the United States or in Brazil. Yeah, if Tony can actually tell you, most of our chickens, even the feed of most of our chickens is actually grain-fed. Within 3 weeks or so, they can give them some enzymes such that within about 21 days, their chickens are ready. And our chickens, like what we were saying, is that they take about 32, 33 days for them to be out. We can't match them in terms of the cost of production, but rather in terms of the health of our product, which Africa needs to learn and understand. Our chickens are more healthy than the Brazilian or the United States chickens, which are actually putting the plastic and this big just expand after being fed with amendment. So it's actually the balance where the government needs to come in to protect the local industry, and also after protecting the local industry, they save jobs.
Okay, do you agree to me?
I do agree, and if I may add, South African Poultry Association, there is no room for chicken imports. It also assist to close the gap in terms of demand. So when we've got the demand of chicken or protein higher than the local production, the chicken imports are coming in to close that gap. However, there should be fair competition. You can never have a price of chicken that is landing at a retail store way cheaper than where it is being produced. Second, you can't have a package that does not clearly state where does the chicken come from, because a consumer needs to know the origins. We as South African producers, we comply with all the regulatory frameworks regarding traceability and all of that. So that is very important as well, be it chicken or anything that is coming from other countries, to be able to be safe for our consumers. But over and above that, we must also remember that, we are protecting the consumer to see to it that they are getting a fair price for what they are buying. However, we should also be able to create a good balance act, making sure that, Mr. Mawiri, we are not becoming a food insecure country by importing everything and losing jobs, in our local industries. Because if we look at the retail, if you look at the clothing sector, they suffer because of such a thing. So we are not, in summary, saying that we are against chicken imports. We are saying that there has to be a fair competition. And when you look at our production, Mr. Mawir, we are producing very, very efficiently in this country.
Okay, there's a comment. So why should people suffer to sustain local suppliers if it's too expensive to produce? People are interested in cheap and sustainable supplies. Yeah.
People are interested in affordable supply, because we are also dealing with, we mustn't undermine the wisdom of our consumers. We are not saying we will eat a cheap chicken, which is posing a threat on our economy or on our food security. We are saying we are prepared to eat our locally produced chicken that is able to sustain us in the long run, which is safe for us, that is generating revenue for our own. We are looking at an industry that is building infrastructure instead of just importing a chicken that is coming through a laptop and a cell phone. In this particular case, the grain farmers are part of the value chain. So that's what our South Africans and our fellow Africans are saying.
Okay, it's not sure you can go. Hello?
Yes, Mr. Yes.
You can ask the other questions, yeah?
Hello?
You can ask the other questions and comments from Kwangwari and Mufudzi.
So we've got Mufudzi who says, do you have evidence to support your statement? Who has been affected and by what disease? Okay, sorry about that. Let me just go firstly to the statement that was before that. I think George had put a statement stating, "I'd rather wait 32 days to get the African chickens. I'm more concerned for my health than convenience." To which Mufudzi stated, "Do you have evidence to support your statement? Who has been affected and by what disease?" So, in regards to that particular statement, when it comes to the issue of one's health, when you look at imported chickens from countries like Brazil, countries like the US, is there a health concern from such meat from these countries that is being imported into South Africa?
Did you hear the question?
Tinashe, I can hardly hear you. You sounding very, very far. If you could speak closer to your mouth.
Okay. I think the comment read, do you have evidence to support your statement when you say people have been affected by chicken disease and this disease control and that you have healthy? I think this question is directed to Mr. Mugwagwa. Are you just bullshitting or you know what you're talking about?
Okay, he's asking about what I was saying, our chickens are healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, because the only factor is that the evidence is that a normal chicken, if you do, it would actually be there. You need almost about 26 days for you to have a normal chicken. So now, if a chicken is on less than 20 days for it to mature, then it actually casts some aspersions on us. That's number one. Number two, I think the caller has had for a long time of what we call GMO, which is genetically modified food or organisms. I mean, they call it. So what we are saying is that our chickens are not GMOs because they are great. We can only talk about our chickens. They are not GMOs because they are great. And about chickens of the United States or Brazil. I don't know if it answers the question. Of the caller.
Yeah, I think that answers And then there is people are not saying that it or people are not. People are suffering and need reasonable prices, guys. Be reasonable, you guys. I thought you were black. Let's have black prices.
We can be reasonable. But remember the cost of our cost of production here in Africa. When I say Africa, I mean South Africa, particularly in South Africa. Our cost of production are a bit higher than what the United States and Brazil produce their chicken. The United States and Brazil, when they produce their chicken, they are substituted by the state. And we don't have any substitute from the state to produce our chicken, our best.
But they're saying that you two guys now speak like whites. What's your problem?
We speak
like white people now, because you are talking about cost, you are talking about all this. Can't you feel sorry for your black brothers?
We business, not necessarily.
So you are now a businessman, you are no longer a black brother.
The beauty about business is that you work with profit, you work with cost, you work with all many other standards of compliance, and they do not look into color of your skin.
But there's white monopoly capital and you are denying it now. Huh? Whites are eating alone.
You see, we can either continue to complain that they are eating alone or do something about it. And when I look at our policies, especially we're talking about transformation. It may be slow, but I'm of the view, Mr. Mawere, that we cannot transform an industry that doesn't exist. So if we want to transform the poultry industry, we need to then make sure that we don't kill it through chicken imports. So that we can transform it and ensure there is participation of the previously disadvantaged. Then we can close that chapter in our life and all become farmers.
Oh, so you're looking at fundamentals now. Huh?
Yes.
I thought independence was being independent of price increases. So can't you get a president to declare the cost not to increase?
That's command poetry now.
Now I'm saying is, can't you get your president you elected to keep the prices low?
We are also dealing with an open market system. If you look at all the
Apartheid was not open. Now to me you're saying that post-apartheid must be open. Is open. Why can't you close it for blacks?
That's a good question, Mr. Mawere. However, we are trying to all different kinds of treaties with the World Trade Organization. And we cannot be an island because we are also putting some of the products to other countries. And we are importing as well. However, we need to do that without killing our own industry.
Okay, I got Mshana, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here behaving myself.
So I think, yeah, so we are almost done. So Mshana, you can is it a question or comment?
Well, it's a comment and a question. It's all together. But anyway, listen. I worry so much about people who want to talk about things that they do not have quite a lot of insights in terms of genetic modified foods. There's a lot of this scaremongering which goes around talking about GMOs cause diseases, yet we have not seen any evidence that links any GMOs to specific diseases, right? So this idea of saying our cost of production for the local products is higher. We cannot compete with countries like Brazil and America. People, when they are suffering, they do not care, where the chicken is coming from or how it's made. They are interested in having something that is reasonably priced, that they can afford, so that they can have a meal they can eat. So if local producers are finding that their chickens are costing more, shouldn't they be thinking about how can we compete with countries like Brazil and America? What is it that we can do to bring the prices down and still maintain the African chicken, as it were? I think that is what they should be thinking about. Not saying the government has to protect us. The government has to ring fence our products so that no one else can bring in chickens, so people can continue to suffer. That makes no sense to me at all.
Okay, did you hear the comment?
Yeah, no, we're hearing the comment. I could hardly hear that comment. If you can also
Maybe just Mr. Mugwagwa, you can just help to me just to understand what is the baseline of what Mushana is saying.
no, I think the comment is saying that we are hiding behind GMO in part of Africa on the basis that our product or our chicken is expensive for the buyers or for the. In order for us now to win some consumers, we are with our products are very the buyer to understand that the cost of production is very high. Our agriculture is not sufficient. We do everything on our own, like model. And so, if somebody is doing it, I mean, when they are at the farm, most of this, yes, so the cost of I don't know if you with me. Yes, I'm with you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mkob. I think I did allude to that point earlier, and the caller is raising the issue about the consumer. We are saying that the price of a local producer or processor also needs to be checked, and not just say we are asking for protection so that we can then price our product whichever way we want. Remember, there is also local competition amongst our South African companies. What we are seeing as a big problem, and I must say, Mr. Mawere, this is also clearly stated in the master plan, whereby it says that the import of broiler meat has increased by 73% over the past 5 years. Now, that is a very significant number to increase, by 73%. And if you look at the statistics, or the results, the financial results of our local companies such as us, whereby you are seeing that revenue increased by 2.6%. And if you also look at the China poultry industry, whereby it grew by 8% and projected to grow by 8% in the 2019 period to this year. How best do you ensure that you sustain the local industry so that it also becomes competitive? So there is room for import, but what we are not arguing is the dumping of chicken, and that is also evidently seen what has been captured in our pork and the pricing there. We cannot have dumping.
Yes. So
Yeah, so I think,
to respond to
okay,
that,
yeah,
what I would say is, I'm not against, and I want you guys to, hear me correctly. I am not against developing ourselves locally so that we can be self. In fact, that is the best model. That is what we should aim to do. That we should be able to produce our own chickens and to supply our own chickens. The model needs to look like this. The the importers, or those that are exporting to our countries, should find it very difficult to penetrate the market because they cannot beat our pricing because we are producing these commodities locally. That is the one thing that I think local producers should be thinking about. How can we produce locally at very cheap costs and supply our people? But I see the problem that we are having is, you guys think that people should, that the government should protect you because you are local people who are supplying. So first preference should be given to you. But you forget that people are in the business of living life. What is important is what sustains that life. It does not matter where it's coming from, as long as it is cheap and affordable. That is what people want. So instead of you being challenged to say, okay, let's be innovative, let's find ways in which we can produce a product that is competitive enough to shut down this foreign market that is penetrating our local markets. No, you don't do that. What you rush to do is you talk about GMOs, you talk about a dumping of chickens. It's not dumping of chickens. People are quite happy when they can get a chicken that they can afford than your chicken that is made locally and that is expensive, which they can't afford. We have seen this not only in the poultry industry, we have seen it in so many other things. Try and buy spare parts in your country. The pricing is overwhelmed by greed. You look at other commodities, other services. That's why you find things are expensive in Africa. They're only cheap to those people that come from overseas because they can use their currency, to convert into the local currency, which is cheaper. So, guys, let's think about how we can make products that are affordable and sustainable to the local people, and stop giving these excuses of saying, well, the price of rearing these chickens or producing these things is expensive. Why is it not expensive in Brazil?
no,
If they decided to go GMO, if they decided,
I think you came later. What Mr. Mugwagwa said, he said the other countries subsidize, either they subsidize the feed or they subsidize the output. Secondly, the parts that are exported are not consumed in the source markets. They eat breasts, they eat other pieces. So what is exported largely to Africa are pieces of chicken that are subsidized by virtue of the consumption patterns in the different markets. Is that correct? That in America,
they don't eat the head and they don't eat the feet.
Yeah, so, and we like the feet. Yeah, that's what we like. So they then charge higher prices, recover the money on the basis of the parts they want. Then they
why can't we keep the head and the feet, and then we export the breast and those other
no, but the consumer doesn't know. They already are subsidized because the local producers don't have that apartheid like market where certain parts and then they export certain parts. Here, they have to deal with the whole chicken and make sure that it does circulate. So the imports will end up being skewed in favor of the parts that are not consumed in the source market.
And I'm
therefore,
saying to you, so why can't we take advantage of the fact that we
who
always
is
like
we when we are
best?
trying to build this? Right now,
You are talking about you are talking about the local market. That's what I'm saying. So
yeah,
the producers like Mr. Mgwagwa, let me finish. The producers like Mr. Mgwagwa, why can't they use take what we like in the local market and export what is not commonly
Mr. Mshana, this is the first time Tumi and Mshana and Mgwagwa are talking. They open different markets. So as part of this project, Banking on Africa's Future, about the African future, that Tumi and Mr. Mgwagwa must know each other on first name basis because they're talking the same language. And hopefully we can bring other people because there are few black players, but there are more black actors in government. They could confuse the president of Zimbabwe to say, please stop the imports. And he agreed. But here, the people who drive the industry are of a different complexion than the people who are in government. So this is the first stage. Mr. Tumi is part of the South African Poultry Association, but he just joined because he is busy trying to build his business. He doesn't have time to be on air, time to say arguments. He operates on his own. How best do we become? We learn from how the colonialists came here, settlers came here and came together to build an industry. It's not a black or white thing. The imports affect every producer. So they're not fighting just for themselves. And what Tom is saying and Mr. Mgwagwa is saying is that we're outgrowers. Our fate depends on the industry. And we are just a part of a chain. So we are trying to understand how best we can strengthen their capacity.
The challenges.
Yeah, the challenges.
I hear you. I hear you. And I think, guys, I think you're doing a great job because obviously you are trying to create something that is local. And I think, yes, there is a need for support. But the key for me is that we need to start thinking about how best can we produce a good product, but also sustainable in terms of
So
pricing.
this morning I was at Tumi's operation, very clean, very. He has never. Fatalities are within the industry. No, he's off taker. They think he's a great guy, and they don't regard him as a black a broiler operator. No, in fact, he's looking to expand the business. And the question is, how can we put these minds together so that we build something, whether Mugwagwa, whether he's in Zimbabwe and Zambia, we begin to build ourselves one person at a time. So the qualities, but there are fundamentals of the industry that are controlled by things that fall outside their control. And they need to be addressed.
Tumi, can I just ask a question in terms of what we're talking about here, in terms of addressing the problem? And also, Mr. Mgwagwa, if you can also chip in. Your biggest challenge, if I'm not mistaken, is to do with the feed. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's asking whether the biggest challenge is the feed issue, which is about 66%. Yeah. So anything that is over 50% is not is the elephant in the room.
Okay. So if they were people that produce the feed and supply you reasonable pricing, will you support them, local people?
No, the feed is provided by the outgrower because it is the formulation is scientific. Because you have to get the weight that you. So there are other KPIs in this industry, and it depends on the kind of feed that you. There are people who are spending their time, scientists, trying to find the optimum feed.
Correct.
Looking at all the economic variables and financial variables.
Oh, okay.
So it's not just a question of feeding chicken today and tomorrow you change the feed. Remember, the chicken
I think what I
They
think the
get
point I wanted to
instant food.
make, the point I wanted to make was that as a solution, perhaps we need to challenge others to look into the feed production sector, right?
But
And I
the
thought
person
we
who
were
gives,
talking about solutions. So
no, I'm saying if you
potential
understand the
solution.
broiler operation, you get a day-old chick, and you have to keep it for 30, 32, 33 days or 34 days. And while you are keeping it, it's a prisoner. You have to feed it. So the guy who gives you the chick gives you the feed. Is that correct? Then
Yes.
when he collects the meat, he then pays you back for the feed. I mean, he deducts from what he's giving you 66% and keeps. So you end
Right.
up with 33%. So you don't have a choice.
So you can't negotiate and say I can have the chicks, but I can get my own feed. Can we negotiate on the percentages?
No, that's a different model. They won't guarantee to buy back, to buy from you because the feed can affect the quality of the meat and the
Yeah,
disease.
I mean if the meat is good, I mean this is this is what I'm saying, Kakuti. People have to try, isn't it, to break into that industry. So people will it's not you're not just selling things that you haven't tried and tested. I'm saying if that works, would that be a potential solution to say, oh,
No,
okay,
it won't be a
can we
potato because
negotiate?
it requires even the suppliers. Okay, let's okay. You want to have your hello? Yeah.
What the scholar to understand that these are different ways who are giving their own, which they come through their water resources, and they can guarantee you of the quality of their chip. And the same people they give you the feed after they have done a scientific formulation method, when they guarantee you that in 22 days, our chicken is a certain way, and they are free of salmonella, they are free of any other disease. And the H1N1 good to keep what we are giving you, and they can produce the right price in the market. So what the grower does now, that's the old caller, what the grower does now, the grower keeps chicken for the off-taker. Because the grower is the one who is the infrastructure for turning a chicken to a chicken within a reasonable time at a reasonable cost, which is calculated. And then the grower will actually give back the chicken to the off-taker who is supplied to the The off-taker takes away all his costs and then he gives the grower back the net of the cost.
Yeah, like that's like command agriculture, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's its own protocol that.
Yeah.
So
But then we can't. What's interesting is you're talking about scientists working on the feed and making the formulation. I mean, that's the same as genetic modified organisms, isn't it? That's what you're producing. Only they're not using that word. Those
no,
words. How are they?
I think Mushana, we will talk about that the next time. All I can
Okay.
say is that this is. We just wanted to make a short in and out so that
Right.
we get the people to know each other. We have a long
Excellent.
industry, and Mushana, your input is very important because it helps clarify the issues, helps people think, and it's not just a plain vanilla issue. What are the threats? What are the challenges? And this is the best there is to finance the farm. And unless you have an off-taker, you can produce the chicken, eggs, but you end up with nothing. So this is what is there. And it allows you to pay your bills. It allows your family to be able to pay your school fees. And let's celebrate the entry of blacks into the value chain. And it's important. And they need the support of established players. It's not a fight, because at the end of the day, if the quality of chicken is bad, everyone pays the price. So I can't fight my contract giver, because once he gives me a contract, he's also giving me a promise that 33 days you got a market. You don't have to worry. I just come and pick up my, and I give you a check, and we move to the next cycle. So this is what we must celebrate. So I congratulate Tumi and Mr. Mkwagwa. It's not easy to operate under this, and then with the 33%, you have to cover the other costs. It's not easy. You have to invest in infrastructure, facilities, you need water, you need climate control, you need temperature control, you need vaccines, you need all these that come from your contract giver. And in partnership, you discover that the chicken requires a lot of value added, even in Zimbabwe. It's not all the cost of chicken, it's not a local thing. The vaccines are imported. You may discover that there's a lot, diesel is imported. But how many people say, if it's local chicken, you must sell it in Zimbabwe dollars? They don't know that you need import portion within the chicken. And it's not costless. So I think that's the education we need, Mshana. It's a long journey.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for letting me, ask these questions and share my thoughts. Until next time.
Thank you. Don't be discouraged, Mshana. But and I know,
I'm
and
not discouraged. It's
okay. You wanted to give your parting shots, Mshana. Maybe Mshana is gone.
Mshana is gone.
All right, so you can give your parting shots, whether this literacy is important, discussions are important. To me, maybe your last words.
Yes, Mr. Mawere, I think we welcome this debate. It gives us an opportunity also to engage with Mr. Mshana. But one of the key things that I would like Mr. Mshana also to recognize is that when we produce chicken, we produce a full chicken. We are not producing meat alone, drumsticks, and the rest. We are producing a complete chicken. So I would like us to engage more if time allows next time, that we can be able to educate one another in terms of what it takes to produce that full chicken. And vis-a-vis when we request that we compete with certain portions that are coming into our country. And we also believe, and I must reiterate that we believe in a competitive industry, because we are running businesses, and competition helps you to be innovative, to be able to find new ways. And I also want to fully agree with Mr. Mkwagwa that we are feeding our chickens drink. We are not even hiding, around the GMO, debate. Neither are we demanding government to protect us without any valid reason. We've got evidence at SAPA that there are certain portions that are coming in below the producer price from where the chicken is coming from. And those are facts. And we cannot allow ourselves to keep quiet, to allow our industry to go down, the road. We can't allow ourselves to go down that way. And I want to also welcome Mr. Mkwagwa that he's doing a good job by convincing their government. Our government also is listening, and I believe through this master plan we will be able to make some improvements. Thank you.
And
I want to say thank you for bringing this it's an important discussion. What Sana needs to know is that yes, chicken production is very important to produce chicken and the meat chicken, which is the food product. But he also needs to know that as farmer, you don't only look at the chicken and the waste of the chicken and how it is making money. You also look at the byproducts of chicken, like the chicken poop, the manure. It's actually used to manufacture and to manufacture some fish.
Hello? Hello?
You get that almost for free.
Uh, hello? 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 Okay, it seems to be a connectivity issue. Just trying to re-establish the connection so that at least we can wrap up this conversation. And yes, to those who have been tuning in, following the conversation, well, thank you for making the 1873 FM your channel of choice. And to those who have contributed in the form of comments and also questions, thank you for engaging in this conversation in as far as deepening and broadening this knowledge around the poultry value chain. So make sure that between 8:30 and 9 a.m. Central African time, you are also tuned in on the Santon Express Morning Show as we go deeper in as far as the poultry industry, the challenges, the threats, and the promises of the poultry value chain is concerned. And yes, thank you so much to Tumi Mkwena. Mkwene. Thank you to Mr. Efes Mgwagwa. Thank you to Mushana Murefu for his contributions. And thank you to Mr. Mawere for also giving up time to be part of this conversation. And on that note, it's goodbye from me, Tinashin Basiri. And yes, let's make sure you are tuned in between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. Central African time on the 1873 FM as we bring to you the Santon Express Morning Show. Right. Sounds of the 1873 United Artists with the track titled Change the World.